She was forced to marry a sick man, but what happened months later will shock you. It was a bright Sunday morning, but for Clara, the day felt suffocatingly dark. She stood at the doorstep of her uncle's house, the air thick with a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. "You don't have a choice, Clara," her uncle's voice rang out, cold and unforgiving. "Marrying Andrew is your only way out of this misery." Clara had grown up in the village, and often under the roof of her uncle, surrounded by greedy relatives who only saw her as a burden. She had known only hardship but had managed to remain kind and strong. Yet, no amount of resilience had ever softened the cruelty of her uncles, who treated her like a servant, a pawn in their schemes. Now, they were forcing her to marry Andrew, a wealthy but sickly man, rumored to be bedridden most of the time. She had heard the whispers, the pitying glances. Andrew was frail, a shadow of a man, and her uncles insisted this was her fate. "Pack your things. You're going to your husband's house now," her uncle said, handing her a small suitcase, the only possession she could call her own. The car revved impatiently, as if eager to take her away from the only home she had ever known, though it had never truly been hers. She looked back one last time, her heart aching. But there was no time for mourning. There was no choice. As the car sped off, Clara clutched her seat, her body tense with fear and uncertainty. Was she being sold into a lifetime of misery? How would she survive with a man too weak to care for himself, let alone a wife? The unknown loomed ahead like a dark abyss, threatening to swallow her whole. But what Clara didn't know was that her life was about to take a twist, one that no one, not even her uncles, could have predicted. Clara's arrival at Andrew's house felt eerie. The mansion, though grand, was cold and unwelcoming, more like a prison than a home. Silence echoed through the hallways, broken only by her footsteps. A servant led her to a spacious room. Her new life had begun, but nothing about it felt real. Andrew lay in bed, propped up by pillows. His pale face, barely visible under the thin sheet, looked drained of life. The room smelled of medicine and stale air. "Welcome, Clara," Andrew's voice broke the silence, weak, yet steady. His tired eyes locked onto hers, searching for understanding. Clara froze. How was she supposed to respond to a man she barely knew? "Thank you," she muttered. Andrew offered a faint smile. "I know this must be difficult for you. I was not the man you expected to marry." Clara didn't know what to say. Was he apologizing? Or simply playing the role of a weak husband? "Don't worry. I won't ask for much," Andrew continued. "Just be here. That's all I can offer." Clara nodded, but inside, she felt trapped. She had been sold to a man who could barely live, much less love her. But she had no choice. She had to endure. She had to survive. Weeks passed. Clara went through the motions of being a wife, though everything felt wrong. She helped Andrew with his needs, but he remained a ghost, barely speaking. His nurse handled his care, leaving Clara to sit by his bedside, her thoughts drifting to the family that had abandoned her. Then, one evening, a knock on the door shattered the silence. A servant rushed in, breathless. "Madam," he gasped, "your husband, he's gone." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Gone," she whispered. The servant nodded grimly. "He passed away in his sleep. No one saw it coming." Clara stood frozen. The man she had been forced to marry, the man who had barely lived in her eyes, was dead. It felt surreal, as if the world had suddenly turned upside down. She had been prepared to care for him for years. She never imagined it would end so quickly. Her uncles arrived within hours, their faces masked with false sympathy. "Clara," one of them cooed, "we are so sorry for your loss. Andrew was a good man. We'll take care of everything." But Clara knew better. They had never cared for her, only for the money. And now, with Andrew gone, they were circling like vultures, ready to claim his wealth. Days passed, and Clara's mourning turned into suspicion. Something wasn't right. She began digging through Andrew's papers, his medical records, searching for answers. And then, she found it. Andrew's death had not been natural. Someone had been poisoning him. Slowly, methodically, feeding him small doses of something that weakened his already frail body. Her uncles. They had orchestrated everything. They had married her off to a dying man, knowing his wealth would transfer to her, and with her under their control, they could take it all. Clara's stomach churned as the truth sank in. She had been nothing more than a pawn in their cruel game. But they had underestimated her. The next morning, Clara entered the living room where her uncles were already discussing their next move. "We'll arrange the funeral, sell the property, and settle everything quickly," one said. "The sooner, the better." Their greed was blatant. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady. "You think I don't know what you did?" They turned to her, feigning innocence. "What do you mean, Clara?" She clenched her fist. "You killed him." The words cut through the air like a blade. "I found the evidence. You poisoned Andrew. You thought you could use me to get his wealth. But you made a grave mistake." Silence. Her uncles shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. "You have no proof," one of them sneered. Clara smirked. "Oh, but I do. And if you try to take what's mine, I'll make sure the authorities know everything." The room grew thick with tension. For the first time, she saw fear in their eyes. "You're going to regret this," one spat angrily. Clara didn't flinch. "No. You're going to regret underestimating me." Over the following weeks, Clara did exactly what she had promised. She gathered evidence, Andrew's medical records, traces of poison, hidden messages in his journal, and financial documents linking her uncles to the crime. With the help of trusted allies, she presented everything to the authorities. Her uncles fought back, but the evidence was undeniable. They were arrested, their wealth seized, and justice was served. It came at a cost, the pain of betrayal, the scars of manipulation, but Clara refused to let it break her. Instead, she used her inheritance to build a new life. She started a foundation for orphan girls, giving them the education, support, and safety she never had. Her story became one of resilience. She had been used, deceived, and nearly broken, but she had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever. The moral of Clara's story is simple: never let anyone define your worth. Even in the face of betrayal and adversity, you have the power to rise, to fight, and to take control of your destiny. If Clara's journey inspired you, share your story. Remember, you are stronger than you think. Keep fighting, keep believing. And never let anyone dim your light.